The following account was recorded at a Travelers Guild outpost in the Draskan Fringe, relayed by an unidentified traveler who arrived under unknown circumstances. His robes were torn, his mind wavered between lucidity and a hollow, distant silence, and his psionic signature bore the telltale distortions of prolonged exposure to a reality inconsistent with known spatial dimensions. According to the traveler, his ordeal began during what should have been a routine transit via the established waygates, ancient portals maintained through a fusion of arcane sciences and psychic resonance. His destination was a guild-sanctioned waypoint in the Sagittarian Divide, a trip he had taken countless times before. He performed the standard rites of passage, attuned his mind to the gate's frequency, and stepped forward into the shift stream. But something deviated. Not a malfunction, not an error. Something chose to pull him away. He emerged not at his intended location, but upon a world locked in twilight, circling a dying star that barely cast any light across the cold and dust-ridden landscape. The waygate he had stepped through was gone. No residual energy, no framework, no trace that it had ever existed. He was alone. Before him stretched the remains of a great city, vast and blackened with age. The structures towered in silence, constructed from stone that absorbed the dim light rather than reflected it. Though the air was thin, it carried no signs of life. The streets were barren, untouched by time, yet filled with an unnatural stillness. There were no remains of inhabitants, no signs of struggle, only the ruins and something just beyond perception. The traveler wandered for what he could only describe as a time outside of time. The sun did not rise or fall. The stars barely shifted. Shadows seemed to move of their own accord, stretching unnaturally in response to his presence. At first, he dismissed it as a trick of the failing light, until he noticed that the shadows were not cast by any physical object. They lingered, even in places where there should have been none. Then there were the inscriptions, carved into walls, doorways, even the shattered remnants of what might have once been an archive. He did not recognize the language, yet his mind understood the words as if they had always been there, waiting for someone to read them. "We were here. We are gone. You are not alone." Though he was a trained traveler, disciplined in both arcane navigation and psionic stabilization, the weight of the place pressed against his mind. The city was not merely abandoned, it knew it was abandoned, and it waited. With no gate, no means of calling for aid, and no clear path forward, he began to despair. Then, on what he estimated to be his 13th cycle, in the ruins, something shifted. The whispering presence that had lingered at the edges of his perception began to draw closer. The air thickened. The stillness of the city broke, not with sound, but with a presence pressing against his thoughts. It was then that he saw it, a fracture in the fabric of reality, not a waygate, not something crafted by science or spell, but a raw tear pulsing with a resonance unlike any known transit system. It had not been there before. Whether it had formed naturally or had been placed there for him, he did not know. With no other choice, he cast himself into it. When he awoke, he was lying on the outskirts of a Travelers Guild outpost in the Draskan Fringe, his mind fractured but intact. He was found wandering, his psychic signature frayed and distorted, his recollection of the events fragmented yet unwavering in its details. When pressed for more, he refused to speak further. When asked if he would ever seek to return, he only shook his head. "It wasn't abandoned," he murmured before departing. "It was waiting." Neither the Akashic Archives nor the Travelers Guild can verify the authenticity of this account. No established waygate should have been able to divert a traveler to an uncharted world. No known records match the described civilization. If the city exists, It does so beyond the reach of our maps, perhaps beyond the reach of time itself. This has been an official record of the Akashic Archives. Truth is measured not in certainty, but in the echoes it leaves behind.